Yes, hello and welcome to another action-packed Play on the Scottish Football Show. Stick with us for the next hour as we go through all things Scottish football. As always, I'm David Simmons and delighted to be joined by Anthony Brown and my esteemed colleague Stephen Commons as well. Stay tuned as we look back over the Scottish football and action highlights and key talking points. And today we are talking about Celtic and Rangers Colts teams. Should they be allowed to join the Scottish Lowland League? We'll look back on the Scottish Cup reaction from the weekend as well, plus so much more. Like every week, we're live, we're interactive, and we want to hear from you guys. Get the comments in and we'll discuss your comments on tonight's show. Don't forget, if you're watching via YouTube, like I say every week, subscribe to the State of Mind YouTube channel, pop on over to Twitter and follow our Twitter page as well, Play on the Scottish Football Show. So we're going to start with the Lowland League. There's a meeting happening tonight to decide on whether they're going to admit Celtic and Rangers B teams into the Scottish Lowland League. Now, both Glasgow clubs have had the opportunity to state their cases before this meeting tonight to say what they're going to bring to the table, really. There's been conversations had at Lowland League clubs. There's even been conversations had with the leagues below and the leagues above as well, as to say how this is all going to pan out. So we're going to discuss that to start with. Stephen, what's your opinion on Rangers Colts, Celtic Colts possibly joining the Lowland League at Tier 5, I think it is?
Very simply, my opinion is that the two of them can GTF. I'm not a massive advocate of them having... I mean, Rangers and Celtic, let's face it, have already got a massive advantage over every single club in this country. Financially, they're the biggest supported, they're the biggest backed. This would just be another sort of string to their bow. And I understand that these clubs probably want to try and expand as much as they can within this sort of goldfish bowl or small pond of Scottish football. But at the end of the day, why should Rangers and Celtic be given yet another advantage over other clubs? I mean, we're off the back of COVID, so Aberdeen, Hearts, Hibs, St Johnstone, Dundee United, they're not going to be in any position to even be thinking about a Colts team, never mind trying to work out where they're going to insert it into the Scottish football pyramid. If Rangers and Celtic were serious about this, and this was really about like the fairness and then they would start at the very lowest point of Scottish football. The same as if you, myself and Anthony decided to start a team tomorrow, where would we start off? The very lowest point. So if Rangers and Celtic are serious about this, then that's what they should do. They shouldn't be trying to buy their way into the league by offering basically bribes and saying that, oh, well, we should go into League Two. Well, that soon got kiboshed. So what do they do next? They just go down to the next tier and they try and pay off these clubs by saying, oh, we'll give you 50 grand each and all our supporters will come to your stadium. Well, they tried putting the Colts teams into the League Cup or the League Cup, the Challenge Cup. The Challenge Cup format. And did it massively boost the attendances? Definitely not. Hearts Colts were playing Stranraer on a Wednesday night. Were there 500 Hearts fans going to watch that? No. It's a complete myth. They think that if Rangers are away from home, if Rangers are playing Kilmarnock, say, at Rugby Park, that 1,000 Rangers fans are going to travel to Cumbernauld to watch them play Cumbernauld Colts. It's just not going to happen. The Rangers and Celtic don't get big attendances at their under-23 games as it stands now. So why would these mythical fans just choose out of nowhere to then just start supporting all these young lads? It's nonsense, and it's all kind of airy-fairy, oh yeah, this will happen, and the money will be spread amongst all the clubs because of the attendances and the gate receipts. I don't believe that. To be perfectly blunt and to be perfectly honest, I don't believe that that's a factor. And any club that's signing up for this now in the Lowland League, I believe, is doing this on the fact that it's going to get more exposure to the league. Yes, definitely. And they're going to get this massive windfall, well, massive for these clubs at the start of their campaign. And they'll be looking at it, maybe saying, well, Rangers and Celtic have said this is basically a trial and they won't be able to be promoted or relegated out of the league. They're just going to kind of go in there and see what level they're at. Well, that's fine for season one, but what do you think is going to happen in season two? What's the conversation? That it's basically the email is already in the drafts from Rangers and Celtic, that as soon as that season finishes, they go, that was great, guys, a great success, everyone got loads of money. Now, here's what we propose for season two. We'll do the exact same again, but we'll be entitled to be promoted. And then that's their sneaky way into the bottom leagues again. So as much as I don't have a massive, strong opinion on these Colts teams being in there, right? If that's where they belong and they deserve to be there, then great. And I do buy into this. It'll be better for the national team because there's more young, talented kids who are at Rangers and Celtic. They must be good to be at that level in the first place at 18, 17, whatever. These guys are going to be coming up and playing against men, and I get that argument. That's great, but it's not to the detriment of other teams who are battling their way to try and get up into that league. And as we discussed before, there are teams in those positions who are quite happy just being there, and those are the teams which will vote for this to be a success. But then you've got the likes of, as you see, BSC Glasgow. You've got what's the other big one?
Like Bonnyrigg Rose. You've got East Kilbride. East
Kilbride. That's the one I was thinking of. These guys have got genuine ambitions to get into the league. So they're not going to sign up. Well, I would hope that they're not going to sign up for us. But I think Bonnyrigg have already said that they're going against it. So it's a complete mess, and it's yet again Rangers and Celtic trying to take advantage of a financial meltdown in this country's football system for their own advantage.
Yeah, I mean, Anthony, we talked about this off air. I mean, you made a good point that other countries successful in football, the likes of, I think you were talking about maybe Spain and Germany and stuff, they have adapted this where the bigger clubs have teams in the lower divisions as well, haven't they?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's quite widespread throughout various countries in Europe in terms of the Colts system. So there has to be merit in it. I always try and look at both sides of every argument. I mean, my gut instinct on this is that I don't like the idea of it, more for traditional reasons. That I've obviously watched a lot of League 2, League 1 football, old third division football, whatever you want to call it, over the years. And I love it when different teams win the third division championship or the second division championship and get their day in the sun. I mean, Arbroath won their first title only a few years ago, if I remember rightly. And they absolutely loved that. And every club that wins a title at that level, that is like the pinnacle for them. Or not for every club at that level, because some of them will want to go up and get into the Premiership. But winning their league is a massive deal. It might not seem much to Premiership fans or whatever, but winning League 2 or League 1 is a massive deal for most of the clubs who traditionally operate in those divisions. And I know initially they're talking about going into the Lowland League, but as Stephen said, that would presumably be with a view to getting into the league sooner rather than later. And the idea of any team who has spent several years in League 1 or League 2 being denied the possibility of that championship winning feeling because Rangers Colts they're going to have good young players, or Celtic's Colts are going to win that league, and which fair play, the Rangers and Celtic Colts would probably still enjoy winning that league. Certainly the individuals involved would, I would imagine. But just the fact that those teams who are able to cherry pick the best youngsters in the country would have that option of winning the league and denying what I would see as traditional League 1, League 2, and even potentially Championship clubs from that moment of glory, that doesn't sit well with me. But I'm a bit traditional in that regard, and I don't know how much clout that argument would hold in terms of the practical side of it and the potential benefits for Scottish football in terms of promoting and nurturing youngsters. Does that override tradition? Because I dare say it probably, as Stephen's touched on, it probably would be to the benefit of the Rangers and Celtic young players if they were getting the chance to go out and play as a team against men, fully fledged, I say fully fledged professional, but you know what I mean? Yeah. Players, hardened players in the Lowland League or League 2 or League 1. I think if the whole Rangers under 20s team or whatever it is that is going in to play against these guys, I think it would bring them on. I don't think there's any question of that. And I read an article, Stephen Naismith last week was talking about the Colts, and he hinted that, he was saying, sometimes when players get punted out on loan to the lower leagues, all they're doing is turning up on the match day or maybe one training night on a Thursday, and they don't really get a proper chance to integrate and feel part of the team. So they've trained with their Premiership team during the week, and then they go away and play their game on a Saturday, but they've not actually been fully drilled on what to expect. They don't have that chance to build all the sort of stuff that goes with being part of a team, the day-to-day training and the just building the team spirit. So they don't get that. They're getting put in an environment with these guys who they only really see once or twice a week and asked to play. Whereas here they would be playing with their own youth team or whatever age group it was. It is under 20s that's going in, isn't it? So they'd be going in with under 20s they'd have all their mates with them, their regular coach, and so they'd be better equipped to go in and do their best, I suppose, and show their best side and come on. So I get that point, that if they were going in as a team, a settled team, they would probably have a better chance of playing to their full capabilities. But equally, you then look at some of the best Scottish players of recent years. Craig Gordon went out on loan to Cowdenbeath. Kenny Miller went on loan to Stenhousemuir. I mean, there's countless examples of players going to the lower leagues on loan, hardening themselves up by playing that side of football. It's never done them any harm. So I'm inclined to say, why can't that system just continue, where Rangers and Celtic loan out their young players to League One, League Two, Championship, Lowland League, whatever they see fit, and give them that chance just to almost sink or swim, or go and get that experience, find out maybe where they're lacking, and go and work on what they need to work on. So there must be merit in it. I've not looked into it enough in terms of how it works abroad. There must be merit in it, because other countries, as we say, are going down that road, or have been going down that road for years. But equally, the traditional side of me says, no, I don't like the feel of it.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and I get what you're saying there. Like, if rather than going out and playing, like, what, 2 players go to East Kilbride, 2 players go to Stenhousemuir, 2 go to Cowdenbeath. If they were to stay at Rangers Colts or Celtic Colts, they would be playing the same philosophy as what they're playing with. Celtic coaches are playing with, Celtic teammates are playing the same philosophy as the first team manager wants them to play. I get that argument. I think what's rustled a lot of people's feathers, and it certainly has mine. I'm involved in a team that's the league below Lowland League, so east of Scotland. I think it's the fact that what's annoying us is that Celtic and Rangers aren't really, the Colts team, aren't starting at the bottom of the pyramid system. The East of Scotland League, the West of Scotland League, which has newly been adapted through the West, which is going to be a very high standard. You've got the likes of Auchinleck Talbot, you've got, St Roch's, you've got loads of big, well-established junior teams which have now started to play in that West of Scotland League. But yet they're jumping 2 leagues above and going right into the Lowland League. There's already been a statement from George Fraser who said that it's not going to be competitive in the way that they will not progress through the pyramid system. So let's just say that Celtic Colts finish first, Rangers finish second. What we're going to do, we're going to promote the third place team then? What's going to happen there?
Even if that happens, I mean, I know this maybe isn't a major point, but even if that does happen, Rangers or Celtic win the Lowland League, they're denying a proper Lowland League club the chance of that moment. Like, do you know what I mean? Yep. You know, you're a non-league guy, you're with Haddington. I know Haddington are not quite at Lowland League level, but imagine being in the Lowland League and you finish third behind Rangers and Celtic, and that's the only year you ever get to that level. You think, oh, we would have won it if Rangers and Celtic weren't here. I don't know, that's the bit that I don't like, the fact that Rangers and Celtic, who have got this advantage in terms of the talent they can go out and pick. I mean, I dare say Rangers and Celtic could probably put together a youth team that is stronger than most Lowland League teams. The offset of that is Rangers and Celtic youths have never won the Petrofac Cup, even though it was the Petrofac Cup that they entered, wasn't it?
I believe so.
It's the challenge. It's the Scottish Challenge Cup.
So I mean, there's no guarantees that they would win the league, but I don't like the idea of Rangers and Celtic winning leagues that are traditionally for other clubs. I know maybe I'm missing the main part of the argument there, but that's the bit that, as a traditionalist and a sort of, like, you know how much I bang on about the way I feel things should be. So that's maybe where I'm coming from. In terms of an absolute, if you take the emotion out of it and what have you, maybe there is merit in this in terms of developing youngsters, but I do understand why there's a lot of opposition to it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean,
there was a really interesting, so they debated this on Sports Sound, I think, a couple of weeks ago, and John Collins was on, and John Collins had a really interesting sort of viewpoint on it. They had John Collins and they had Jim McAnally, who's the Peterhead manager, and this was when they were talking about going in at League Two level. And John Collins argued, it was a sort of double-edged argument, that he said that the Spain team that won the Euros and the World Cup back-to-back, it was something like 79% or just below 80% of that squad had played Barcelona B, Real Madrid B, whatever. So they had played in the B team system and had progressed through that. So what he was arguing was that surely that can only help Scotland, that it's going to get people game time and the national team will kind of prosper off the back of it. But what he was also saying is, well, kind of what you were touching on, Simmy, in terms of they were saying that the players were not, instead of going out on loan to these lower league teams and potentially like if Rangers Colts play out for them back, because that's what the first team do, then they go on loan to Cowdenbeath, and Cowdenbeath don't play out for the back. They're just basically kick and rush. Then that's no good. But all these big teams, including Hearts had one with Gary Naismith, Rangers and Celtic surely must have one. I've got loan managers, and that's the whole point of having these guys, is they identify clubs that they can go to. That's why so many Rangers players are currently at Wraith Rovers, because Wraith Rovers have got this ethos of playing out from the back, building the ball in the midfield. So they've looked at that and went, oh well, this is a move which will only prosper these guys. And then you've got an additional argument to that, the strategic partnership thing that they've brought in. So Hibs have obviously, they've taken up the strategic partnership with Stenhousemuir, where Hibs coaches will go in and sort of help the youth coaches at Stenhousemuir, and between them they will kind of, as you say, get an ethos or a way of playing, so that Hibs would then be comfortable to send 5-6 of their boys down to Stenhousemuir for a season or 2 seasons or however long, and they would be comfortable that they're getting the right coach in, they're getting the right way to play football, so that when they come back to Hibs, they're going to be in a better position. So if teams are prepared to sign up for the strategic partnerships, I don't see the need for these Colts teams. I just don't get it.
Yeah,
I think that's probably the fundamental point. They'll not come out and say it, but they probably, and arguably rightly, they probably don't think that their young players are getting the same level of coaching. I mean, they're probably worried they pick up bad habits playing in that environment, where they're playing with guys who have not quite made it for whatever reason at the top level, and maybe playing a slightly less sophisticated way. Now, I know things have advanced at all levels of the game to the point where even League One and League Two teams generally play out from the back. They play the proper way. But there maybe is an element of Rangers and Celtic thinking, if these guys go out to League Two, they could pick up a few bad habits that is fine in League Two, but it's not really suitable for top-level elite football, if you like.
The other side of that, though, is obviously we talked earlier about say Craig Gordon and Kenny Miller going out on loan to these lower league teams. I've heard numerous professionals talking about when they go out on loan, and the big thing is for them that they've gone from a nurtured environment of academy. This isn't just in Scotland, all over the world. They go from this nurtured, everything's done for them. Like, no longer are these kids sweeping the stands, and they're now looked after really well. And you could say that's good or bad, whatever. But they go to places like Stenhousemuir or East Stirling, and these guys are playing for their mortgages. These guys are playing to get a bonus, a win bonus, which will maybe pay for their car insurance. Like, it's that important to them. It's important, and they go there and see that side of football. That's massive. That's huge. Like, when these pampered kids are going into these clubs and seeing guys that are playing for their livelihood, it maybe puts their mindset, maybe not their technical ability or their tactics, but their mindset into, oh my God, like, either I didn't want to be in this situation ever, like I don't want to come down here and be playing for my livelihood, or, well, look how much it means to these guys. Just because I'm in a privileged position, it should mean as much to me. So you're not going to get that with the Colts teams, are you?
I suppose one of the most recent examples is Josh Doig. Obviously, he was at Queen's Park last year, and now look at him, one of the best players in the league this year.
Yeah. Going to a couple of comments. A State of Mind's very own Soccer Supernova, Amy Kavanagh, she's been on. There is evidence to back the fans don't turn up to the Colts games. Never have, never will. Now, for those that don't know, Amy is quite affiliated with a Lowland League team, so Amy would definitely know that. So there we go. A few other comments as well. Curry Muncher, so let the lower league struggle to keep the club alive when one season's money would guarantee their survival for the next 5 years. I mean, that is a fair point as well. A lot of the lower league clubs, like the club I'm involved in as well, have had to invest heavy in the likes of floodlights to be allowed to reach a certain criteria to participate in the Scottish Cup. So that's the bit that frustrates me. I mean, only a few years ago, the East of Scotland League, they welcomed Hibs under-20s into the league. So basically a Hibs Colts team. Berwick Rangers, they had an under-20s team that was invited into the East of Scotland League as well. That's really what's getting my neck up. I mean, you guys are both from similar areas as well, the sort of Pennycook area. You've seen Pennycook Athletic, who play in the East of Scotland League, and the money, the investment that the committee, the local community has had to invest into Pennycook Athletic to get them to the level that they are now, to then find out that Rangers and Celtic Colts game just swan in a league above them. That's the thing that I think is really getting a lot of people's noses up in the non-league environment.
Yeah, listen, at the end of the day, what that commenter said is probably right. Like, if the money on offer is is future changing. Like everyone always talks about Bonnyrigg Rose, and Bonnyrigg Rose had that famous cup run when they played Hibs at Tynecastle, and there was always the rumours in Pennycook, because obviously Pennycook and Bonnyrig's the big rivalry. There was always the rumours that set them up for 10 years now because of that money coming in. But that can be that sort of windfall for these clubs. We're not saying that Rangers and Celtic should be banned from this. They should not be banned. But the way that it's going around, that they're just kind of using their financial muscle to get in. But ultimately, if these clubs decide that that's what they want to do, then who are we to stop that? Like, if these clubs decide that money is going to be best placed, that they'll maybe have to put their dreams of getting into the league structure on hold for 2 or 3 years, but that money's going to set them up for the next 10 years, then so be it. If that's what they want to do, that's up to them. But I don't agree with the way it's gone around. I think if Rangers and Celtic had anything about them, they would have gone to the bottom of the pyramid and just said, listen guys, we're not trying to buy our way into anything, we're just going to come up and we're going to do this the right way. And if they'd done that, there would be no complaints from me whatsoever. They could if they were allowed to, I'm not sure if that's even something that they would be allowed to do, is to enter a coach team at the very bottom league with no opposition. I don't know if they would have to get permissions to do that. But if that was the case, if they're getting permissions to enter it now, then surely they would have got permissions to enter it at the bottom level.
Yeah, I mean, I love this comment that's just coming from Alan. The Old West junior teams like Talbot, Pollock, Irvine Meadow, Darvel, etc. will dominate the new pyramid system over the next few years. And I think he's right. I mean, these are strong ex-junior teams which have now made the jump over to the West of Scotland League. If you really want, I mean, I'm not saying these young kids will get kicked up and down, but if you really want to put the cat amongst the pigeons and find out what players are going to be able to take a 50-50 that are going to stand up and be counted, that's the league you want to put these Colts teams in.
Yeah, but the thing is, a lot of these teams, everyone has this myth of junior football that it's just all old, frustrated ex-professionals or guys who never quite made it, who are just going to leather these kids up and down the place. That's not the case at all, but they'll learn the dark arts, they'll learn the wee bits of football that maybe a nice Ian Cathro type coach that's learned how to do his coaching sessions on a laptop doesn't know about. They're going to know. These grizzly guys that have played amateur or junior or lower league football for the best part of 20 years, if you're sending an 18-year-old kid in with them and just saying, look at the Hibs youngsters all talk about John Hughes. John Hughes taught them how to be a professional footballer, basically. I mean, I think he was full of nonsense a lot of the time as well, but he taught them how to look after themselves on the park, how to deal with big bullish strikers. But these things are important. And I'm not saying they won't get that by playing against these guys as oppositions, but to be in the dressing room with them as teammates, I think is more important for and going back to the previous points of like seeing firsthand what it means to these guys to win. Like as you said, I don't know which one of you said it, but there could be a Rangers or Celtic Colts team that stop a team winning the league, and there could be guys in that team that have played at Lowland League football or junior football all their lives. And they've dreamed of winning that Lowland League to get into the Football League. And that they're not going to get that opportunity to do that.
Yeah, no, exactly. I think we need to move on from this. We could have a whole show about this. We will come back to the sort of Lowland League side thing very shortly with Celtic Hearts and how they'll be facing Brecon City. But we need to talk about the Scottish Cup semi-finals that happened this weekend, where it finished St Mirren 1, St Johnstone 2. Anthony Brown, my prediction for a St Johnstone double is still very much on the cards, isn't it?
It is. I mean, a phenomenal achievement to firstly get to 2 finals, and then if they go on and win both cups, that will be an incredible achievement in terms of winning the double, being a non-Old Firm team. Yeah, it's been a sensational season for St Johnstone so far, and I mean, this final for me, I know I'm going off on a tangent here because we've not spoken about Hibs yet, but it's impossible to call. Hibs, in terms of league position and overall quality, are the superior team without a shadow of a doubt. But St Johnstone have got something at the moment where you fancy them against anybody. Like they've got this X factor at the moment. They've obviously won the League Cup a couple of months ago, and they're riding a wave. Like you wouldn't bet against them against anybody at the moment. So it's really interesting. It's a flip of a coin match, this for me. I think Hibs, as I've touched on before, I think Hibs have been steeled by previous setbacks against Hearts and against St Johnstone. And I think that's probably given them a bit of focus. I don't think they'll be found short in terms of application and turning up on the day. I think they'll be there. I think they will turn up. But equally, I'm pretty confident St Johnstone will turn up. And if both of those teams turn up at full pelt, they could totally cancel each other out. It could be a really, really tight, nervy game. I wouldn't like to call it. As I say, I think Hibs have slightly more quality, and if they really, if all their front three are playing well and the defence is focused, they should, in theory, win it. But just with St Johnstone in their current vein, I would not back anybody to beat them at the moment in the Scottish football context.
Yeah, absolutely. A few of the comments are coming in as well. Moan the Hibbies for the cup. There's Feed the Bear. You're shaking your head there, Stephen. Here we go. I think St Johnstone will do the double. I predicted it before the Rangers semi-final. I keep bringing that up, so I'm just going to gloat on that.
By the way, you're not mentioning the fact that the two of us predicted that Hibs would win it, so we've got as much a chance of getting this right as you.
I predicted Kilmarnock would win it. I'm out.
That's true. You're out.
Hibs are so up and down, or so bloody up and down, Currymunch, I should say. You have no idea how they're going to play. I mean, like Anthony says, if both teams do turn up on the day, it is going to be a cracking cup final. One thing I have seen on social media recently, Stephen, is that St Johnstone players are really putting themselves out there. I mean, you've got the likes of Xander Clark, who's come on and hit really good form. I've talked about him, possibly how he should be included in the Scotland squad. Someone that you know as well is St Johnstone captain Jason Kerr. I've seen that Celtic Star magazine quoted him as being the ideal replacement if Ayer was to move on. I mean, these St Johnstone players, their performances are now being noticed, I think, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, and quite rightly so. I mean, I had a look earlier today. I saw something on Twitter that out of their last 22 games, St Johnstone have lost only 3, and it was against Aberdeen, Rangers and Celtic. 3 games out of 22 they've lost. So they must be one of the most informed teams in the country. Like, behind Rangers, maybe, they must be the second most informed team of recent times. So it's I don't think they should have anything to be scared of. Yeah, Hibs are a good side this year, and they have been outstanding, to be perfectly honest. They've done really well. We've touched on this numerous times, but this will be their highest league finish for quite a while. But equally, St Johnstone, if it wasn't for that bad start that they had in the league, where could they be? I mean, they could be looking at challenging Hibs for third position and potentially a cup double. I mean, it shouldn't only be these players. I mean, obviously you've mentioned Jason and Xander Clark, and you've got Sean Rooney, Ali McCann. I mean, these guys must be getting looked at by clubs down south. I mean, I'd love for Hearts, if you're an Aberdeen fan or a Hibs fan, you'd probably be looking at these guys and saying, I mean, obviously I don't know if this is a well-known fact, but Jason and his family are pretty green and white when it comes to their leanings in football terms.
Oh, that's so
naughty. It's. I mean, I'm sure, given the chance, he would love to play for Hibs over maybe at Hearts or an Aberdeen. But if I'm his agent, I'm saying to him, like, there's got to be teams down south that are looking at these guys in terms and reasonable level. Must be championship teams, but not only them. The manager.
That's my next question to Anthony. Yep, he's put himself.
Must be in the frame for a job down south somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, we touched on it last week, Anthony, didn't we? Where we said it's so predictable that Steven Gerrard would get Manager of the Year, but Callum Davidson, if he can pull off this double, and like what Steven says, the form that he's had that side playing in the last 23 games, he must surely be up there challenging, isn't he?
Yeah, in terms of Manager of the Year contenders, if they win the double, I don't think, when we had this discussion a few weeks ago about would that be better than what Steven Gerrard's done at Rangers, I think it would certainly be a serious point of debate between Davidson and Gerrard. You could go either way on that, and you wouldn't be wrong either way. I don't think it would just come down to your point of view at that. But certainly, in terms of him being ready to move on to a different club, I would like to see him another season at St Johnstone first, because yes, he's done it in the League Cup, he's done it in the Scottish Cup, and he's done it in the league to an extent in terms of getting them into the top 6, but they scraped into the top 6. I'm not saying this to take anything away from him, I'm just saying there have been instances of managers who have won cups in Scotland in the past, but their league exploits haven't been particularly good. I'm thinking Paulo Sergio at Hearts, for instance, Alan Stubbs at Hibs, Kenny Shiels at Kilmarnock, Danny Lennon at St Mirren. These are all guys who have won cups, but you wouldn't say they've pulled up trees in the league. And I think if you took the cup form away from St Johnstone, you wouldn't say St Johnstone have pulled up trees in the league either. So that would be, I'm maybe being slightly churlish here, but I would like to see if Callum Davidson is the real deal, I'd like to see him have another season and get St Johnstone in the top 6 and maybe even push that bit further and get into Europe next year by virtue of the league position. Don't get me wrong, if he wins the double, you can't really take anything away from him. But cup football is slightly different to league football in terms of you don't have to be absolutely outstanding to win a cup. You just need things to fall into place. So I'm not sure how much, obviously winning the double, it sounds ridiculous even saying that, but winning the double is a massive feat. But I'm not sure it's absolute proof that you are an amazing manager. Do you know what I mean? I think I'd like to see slightly more consistency across the league as well. But that's maybe I'm wrong to frame it that way. But I'd just like to see St Johnstone push that bit further before I was convinced that Callum Davidson is a manager ready to go to England or to Rangers or Celtic or anything like that.
Surely you have to take into consideration though that, like, obviously they had that bad start. You take away that bad start, they would be up there with Hibs and Aberdeen, probably beyond Hibs and Aberdeen with the form that they've shown since October. So that bad start, this is his first ever managerial job. So
I'm maybe being a bit harsh. I'm probably basing it on the fact that he's only won one cup at the moment. If he wins 2 cups, then it's a totally different story. And the whole narrative of winning 2 cups with a club like St Johnstone in one season, it's all going to change. His CV suddenly looks incredible. I'm just making the point that just because he's won a cup does not necessarily make him a great manager.
No, I agree with you.
Average managers have won cups in the past. So, but if he was to win 2 in the one season, then you're probably right. It probably is signs that he is a real manager of substance.
Yeah, Brown Warriors put up a couple of good comments. If St Johnstone do a double, it's a bigger achievement than Rangers winning the league this season. And he's also put up as well a cup double with their budget, hands down, manager of the year. That's the thing. He's definitely up there, and I would love to see St Johnstone do the double.
Anyway, just one last thing. So obviously we're talking about potentially him going down south or whatever. I would like to point out that Preston North End still do not have a permanent manager in place. They've got the boy Frankie McAvoy, who is Alex Neil's assistant, in charge until the end of the season. But they do not have a permanent manager. He was there for 7 years as a player. To me, that's an absolute no-brainer. If they're looking at this and going, who can we get as a relatively cheap manager? So there's my Stephen Commons prediction. Preston North End's next manager.
Somebody write that down.
Might sound ridiculous, but now he's become the sort of man in Scottish football. If for any reason Celtic didn't have Eddie Howe in the bag or that fell through, I'm not endorsing him as a future Celtic manager, but does he then become a contender for that calibre of job? He's as good as everybody says he is.
If Jack Ross is a contender, then yeah. But I don't know if Jack Ross is a contender. I think Celtic are looking way beyond that, and so they should be, to be perfectly honest.
No, I agree. I'm just playing devil's advocate there.
In the other semi-final, Jack Ross's side, they took on Dundee United at Hampden, and it finished Dundee United 0, Hibs 2. They've reached the Scottish Cup final for the first time since their historic 2016 win. Kevin Nisbet, his cam finish, put them 1-0 up, but the second goal was a bit dubious as Christian Doige, can't really pronounce that, Christian Doige, looked like he was quite clearly offside. Stephen, I'm going to come at you with this one because I think he'll come in hard with this. He was offside, mate, wasn't he?
I think so, yeah. I think if it was VAR, that would not have stood. But, listen, Hibs were well worthy of their win. Take away that goal. I understand these sort of moments change football games, and Mickey Mellon will maybe have a completely different opinion on this, but I just think that Hibs looked too strong for Dundee United all over the park. I think they looked well organised, well drilled. And yeah, I just think Doige and Nisbet are such a good partnership up front. They complement each other so well in terms of Doige will go in and take the hits and he'll take them. But when the moment comes, he's still got that finish on him. He's still a good goal scorer. But Nisbet, for me, it pains me to say it because I hate praising anybody who's wearing green and white. But Nisbet I think he's destined for bigger and better things than Hibs, unfortunately. But Hibs will get good money for him if he is to go. But I think now he's probably looking at that situation, especially if he keeps going and maybe scores the winner in the Scottish Cup final or scores a couple more goals in the league, and then potentially gets to go to the Euros in the summer. He'll be looking at this situation of Hibs stopping him going to Birmingham and thanking his lucky stars, because I think he could potentially be looking at a much, much better level than Birmingham City. To be honest, if I was Rangers or Celtic, I'd be looking at him and saying, how much money is it going to be to price him away for Hibs? A couple of million, maybe 2.5. Who are they going to get for 2.5 if they go to the Belgian league, the German league, the English lower leagues? You're not going to get much better than him. So I just think that Hibs have just got that right mix. Jackson Irvine's been such a good addition for them in that midfield as well. I think he just adds legs and tempo into that midfield area. Martin Boyle's still flying. As Anthony said, it's got the makings of a fantastic game of football, that final, but it could also be a complete damp squib if they kind of cancel each other out. But if both teams decide to go toe to toe, which, I mean, I would very much doubt. I think Jack Ross and Callum Davidson are probably a bit too long in the tooth to just say, just go and slug it out, boys, and see who wins. But if that was to ever come around, it would be what a watch it will be. But I'll be watching it through my hands, because if St Johnstone didn't win that, I'm going into hibernation for a month.
I mean, Stephen obviously talked on there, Anthony, the high-flying Kevin Nisbet. Someone that we've got to say congratulations to as a player you mentioned earlier on, is a young lad, Josh Doig. He picked up Young Player of the Year, for 2021. Young lad, big bright future ahead of him. But despite that, he said that he's in no rush to leave Hibs. He's going to be joining the likes of ex-Hibby Scott Brown, Stephen Fletcher on the list of the Scottish Football Writers Young Player of the Year. A couple of shows ago, I think we did discuss that era in Scotland, where a batch of players from the so-called lower teams in Scottish football made that jump to the bigger teams. They were talking like, say, Scott Brown himself, Kevin Thompson, Stephen Naismith, Gavin Ray at Dundee, who moved to Rangers, Stephen Whittaker as well. Do you think that bigger clubs will now look at players like Kevin Nisbet's, like we say, like the Josh Doig, and look to maybe do a full circle again and go back to maybe what happened 10 to 12 years ago and recruit from the Hibs, from the Hearts, sort of bringing through the players, the Aberdeens and the lower leagues to find those golden nuggets?
I think, to be honest, I don't think that's ever stopped. There's obviously periods where it tends to happen more often than other periods, but you look at Rangers signed Scott Wright from Aberdeen in January there, so it's not really
Glenn Kamara for Dundee.
Yeah, I mean, it's Celtic signed. Who did Celtic last sign from? They signed Turnbull.
Turnbull, Greg Taylor.
Scott Bain, maybe. Scott Bain was what, Dundee?
It's not like they've neglected that market. So I think there'll always be. I mean, they obviously looked at John McGinn and decided they didn't want to pay the fee. They were very close to getting him, obviously. So it's not like they are completely neglecting other talent in Scottish football. But I think if they are, there's certainly a decent array of talent out there if they do think, right, we can get better value in Scotland than going abroad. Certainly you would initially look towards Easter Road, where you've got Porteous, Doig, Nisbet, and I would still say, I know he's getting on a bit now, he's 27, 28, so you would argue maybe no sell-on value, but I think Martin Boyle's still worth a punt for Celtic or Rangers. If they were offered 2 million, 1.5 million, they would probably get him. And I think that would be money well spent.
Before Boyle signed his contract extension last season, I could never understand why Celtic, because Celtic could have probably got him for £1 million before he signed his new contract. Why, when James Forrest was out, did they not just go and get him? I mean,
I'm sure, around that time, I can't remember the exact chronology, but he had that big injury, so I wonder if that was a factor. But I mean, he's certainly recovered. I remember when he got injured, you're thinking, right, the age he's at, 26, 27, he's really bad injury there. Is he going to be able to come back for that? And to be honest, he's come back a better player. That's the bizarre thing. He's within probably a month of him returning, he was right back at it. And he had a little bit of a form dip in the first half of the season where he wasn't quite at his best. But I mean, generally over the piece, since that injury, he's been Hibs' best player for me over that period of time. So, I mean, certainly you could look to Hibs straight away. There's 3 or 4 players, and I see Marciano's been linked with Celtic as well, the goalkeeper. So that's 5 players straight off the bat. And we've listed a few players at St Johnstone there that I dare say would be of interest. Perhaps not Xander Clark, but certainly Jason Kerr and Ali McCann would be the sort of players that would attract attention, I would think.
Yep.
Lewis Ferguson.
Yep. I mean, you could go right through the league, and there's probably at least 1 or 2 that you would say, right, he could probably go in and do. Maybe not every club in the league, but certainly if you go right down the ranks, there are at least probably half a dozen to a dozen players that you would say could make the step up to Celtic or Rangers. I mean, I don't like having these conversations because I think it's a little bit disrespectful to the smaller clubs, but the harsh fact is generally a good player at Hearts, Hibs, Aberdeen or any other Scottish Premiership club either goes to England or goes to Rangers or Celtic. That's just the way it always has been and probably will continue to be for as long as the current setup in Scottish football has. The finances are so heavily weighted in favour of Rangers and Celtic. That's just the harsh reality of it. So I don't think they've ever really neglected that market, so to speak. But I think certainly at the moment, if they want to go and find a striker, Rangers or Celtic wouldn't do any harm in looking towards Nisbet. If they want a young centre-half, I know he made that mistake last week, but I still think Porteous at 21 would be a relatively good investment. I know Stephen disagrees. Well, of course it'd be a gamble, but is he any more of a gamble than going to a European centre-back who's never played in the league? And how much are you going to pay for a reputable European centre-back? 3, 4, 5 million plus. You'd probably get Porteous for a little bit less than that. And Martin, we're focusing on Hibs here. As I said, there's players at different clubs that could potentially. I don't think Shanklin's. I think that Shanklin's probably still got scope to go to another level. I know he's not had a great season, but I still think he's a player that could really step up and go to another level and would probably thrive. He's maybe stagnating a wee bit at the moment for whatever reason. He's not quite hit the heights of previous seasons, but I certainly think he's probably. I know Nisbet's ahead of him at this precise moment, but I think Shankland all round is potentially just as good as Nisbet going forward. So again, he's another one that you might think is worth a punt if you were Rangers or Celtic. But certainly there's a few players down there who you would think we could probably do worse than look at these guys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a couple of comments coming in, not targeted at you, Stephen, that's the wrong word I'm looking at, but Chris has said that Preston have today announced the permanent manager of Frankie McAvoy. He's been made permanent today.
All right, okay.
So, and also Stephen won't be happy. Stephen won't be happy that Hearts let Doig go as a youngster, which is
definitely not.
Obviously, one that slipped through the net there. So, what do you think, guys? Obviously, it's putting you on the spot a bit, but if we could try and predict how it's going to pan out next week, not next week, on the 22nd of May, do you fancy Hibs or do you fancy St Johnstone, Stephen?
Hibs.
I didn't expect that one, mate.
Nah, I'm going.
He's
with my
called
head.
Hibs all the way. To be fair,
I've called Hibs right from about Christmas time, but nah, I just think it's. I think it's theirs. I think it's written in the stars. Hearts are. Hibs always seem to have this high point when Hearts are at their lowest, and I just think Hearts are they're so down in the dumps right now. It would just be another kick in the stones for Hibs to go and get another Scottish Cup under their belt. But yeah, I can't see past them. As much as I think the fairy tale St Johnstone story would be great, and I think they've got a right good chance. I just can't see past Hibs, to be honest.
Am I right in saying, Anthony, that when Hibs won the Cup in 2016, it was also Dundee United they beat in the semis?
It was. So I suppose people who look at those sort of things as omens would say that counts in their favour. But I honestly can't call it. If Hibs were against St Mirren, I'd be absolutely emphatic that Hibs would win it. But just St Johnstone, the way they are at the moment, they're such a resilient side that even if they don't play well, they can still make it difficult for you. But they are capable of playing well as well. They're just a really tricky opponent. And I think the fact they've already won a cup this year, there's no pressure on St Johnstone. There's pressure on Hibs because they're the favourites. And if Hibs don't win this, I know it sounds ridiculous given the season they've had, there will be a ferocious backlash if they don't win it. And I think the players will be the players won't be intimidated by that because they won't be aware of it at this moment. But there will be. Hibs fans do not take things. I mean, rightly so. They do not take these sort of setbacks well. If they go in as favourites in a cup final and they get beat, no matter the circumstances, there will be a backlash. There was when they lost to Ross County in the League Cup in 2016. Even though at that point Hibs were a Championship team and Ross County were a Premiership team, Hibs fans still saw themselves as favourites because of the history of the club and all that. They lost 2-1 against Ross County, having arguably been the better team throughout the 90 minutes. They lost a horrible goal right at the end after a mistake from Liam Fontaine. And there was an outcry after it. The Hibs fans were furious about it. But obviously they made amends a couple of months later when they went on to win the Scottish Cup. Whereas here, this is going to be the thing that would arguably define their season. They blew 2 Scottish Cup semi-finals and lost the final to teams that finished beneath them in the league. So I think the negativity of that would override finishing 3rd or even 4th in the league. So I think there's big pressure on Hibs, and there's going to be pressure on the St Johnstone players from within because they'll want to win it. Of course they do, but less pressure because St Johnstone already have a trophy in the bag and already have a massive amount of goodwill from their own supporters. If Hibs were to win it, I would argue that Jack Ross is just as deserving of being in the Manager of the Year chat as, well, he would overtake Callum Davidson on the basis that he's finished third and won the Scottish Cup. And then it would be a case of, is it Jack Ross or Steven Gerrard? I mean, Callum Davidson would still be in the reckoning. Of course he would. It'd be a 3-horse race for Manager of the Year, and ultimately it just comes down to who you think personally. And I could understand an argument for Jack Ross in that instance. I think if Hibs were to win the Scottish Cup, my inclination would be to go for Jack Ross Manager of the Year if they finish third and win the Scottish Cup. But I could see the argument for Callum Davidson in terms of winning a cup and reaching a final. And I can also see the argument of Steven Gerrard winning the league against a club who had won the previous 9 titles in a row. So, I mean, that's the thing about Manager of the Year. It's always a wee bit of an odd one when you have to call it before a big trophy has been decided.
Yeah. I like it this season how it's so open, if that makes sense. Whereas before there was like maybe a clear league winner and that manager was guaranteed to get Manager of the Year. It's really open. It could go to any 3 of them, like you say.
Mate, for the last few years, Celtic have won everything in sight. So, I mean, there's nobody. I don't even think they've bothered to have a ceremony. They've just probably just said, "How's that, Brendan? Just hold on to that trophy another year, mate."
Sign it with the DPD driver. He'll drop it off next week. Ian's a bit shocked that you went for Hibs as well. Stephen tips Hibs. Shocked emoji.
Listen, I take no pleasure in it. I can assure you that. I'm not one of these Hearts fans that says, "Oh, but it would be nice. It'd be nice for the fans. It'd be nice." No chance. Absolutely no chance. I hate Hibs as much as anybody, but I just think it's written in the stars for them to do it.
Yeah, now there's a few comments coming in back in Hibs. David Kelly's as well said that Davidson's already done more than Ross based on budgets, not even close. So there we go. And this is going to cost me a lot of money because I've clearly paid somebody to put up these comments. Hi to Graham, I appreciate that you're enjoying the show. You guys should do this show 2 to 3 times a week, guys. You always give a fair and honest view on the goings on in Scottish football. I do appreciate that. And Paul's obviously backed it up as well, so yeah, love this show, definitely. Maybe something to look for next season, guys. You never know. We'll see what time throws our way. Do keep the comments coming. It's like we say, we're fully live. We're on for the next over 15 minutes, under 15 minutes, but we'll say 15 minutes anyway. So do keep your comments coming on anything that we're going to be discussing. We're going to move on to Celtic Hearts. We talked about non-league football at the start of the show. We're coming back to it as Celtic Hearts, they saw off Brora Rangers. They beat Brora, Stephen. They beat them 6-1 on aggregate.
At least one Hearts team can beat Brora.
So they're getting their shot eventually. They were wrongly done against it last year where there was no playoff, but they are this year. They're getting their shot against Brecon City. How do you see that one panning out, Stephen?
I mean, I hope for the sake of Scottish football and everything that's right, I just hope that Celtic absolutely slaughter them. I hope it's like double figures over 2 legs. Like genuinely, I've got nothing against Brecon as a club. I mean, I don't know anything about their players, their manager. They're nothing against their fans, but their chairman is a despicable human being, and he's part of what can only be described as a mafia within Scottish football. And the sooner it gets cut out, it's like a cancer. The sooner it gets cut out, the better. And if his club getting relegated out of the Football League, and then I hope within a couple of years, Simi, you're smashing them about 4 or 5-0 up at Glebe Park, because that's where they deserve to be because of Ken Ferguson.
I love Stephen, just love him. Anthony, I mean, the Celtic Hearts, they would be a very welcomed addition into the league though, wouldn't they? I mean, they're a club that's went from non-league, like I say, they've invested quite heavily. They've got a decent park there at Celtic now. I know a lot of senior clubs use it for training facilities during the week as well, but for them to progress into League 2, I mean, I think they'll hold their own. We've already seen the likes of Edinburgh City do it, Cove Rangers do it. I think Celtic could be the next ones to follow suit.
You would certainly think so in terms of form. I mean, they're coming in buoyant frame of mind, whereas Brecon are going in a massive downer. I totally get all the acrimony and animosity, towards Brecon at the moment. They've not covered themselves in glory at all with the way they've conducted themselves over the past year, or more so their chairman. But equally, I would couch that by saying they are a club that's been in the league for years, and I would be sad to lose them from the league in the terms of the fact they've been there for years. Very much like East Stirlingshire and Berwick, 2 clubs that, although they didn't necessarily achieve much, they were just nice clubs, good clubs to visit and things like that. So in that regard, I would miss Brecon from the league setup, but equally I understand why a lot of people are wishing them ill on the basis of recent events. So I can see both sides of it. If they stay up, they need to get their own house in order, though, because they've obviously been in a bit of a a downward spiral for the last few years. They've gone from the Championship to, I mean, they were in the Championship a few years ago, weren't they?
Yeah.
Completely imploded, lost their way. So, I mean, they obviously had something going for them to get into the Championship in the first place, and whatever they had that was right has completely gone wrong in recent times. So it's, from their perspective, it's a shame that it's unravelled to that extent, that they've gone from the Championship to potentially non-league. Obviously, they've still got a chance to save themselves, but I think you would say Celtic Hearts at the moment are strong favourites on the. I mean, that's a really big win against a decent team, a team that's just beaten Hearts a couple of months ago, and generally has been the outstanding team in the Highland League in recent seasons. So Celtic Hearts are obviously a high quality side if they're able to come out on top 6-1 on aggregate against Brora Rangers. So, I mean, whoever wins the playoff deserves to be in the league. If Brecon win the playoff, they deserve to stay in the league. As much as people won't be happy to see that happening, they will deserve to stay in the league if they pull it off. But equally, if Celtic pull it off, they deserve to be there as well. So I think it's always nice when new teams come into the league. We've seen Cove Rangers come recently. We've seen Edinburgh City come in. And this obviously would be another new team to the league, another new ground for people to visit. So it's always nice when you get the fresh faces, just a new team, a new ambition coming into it. So, yeah, I mean, I will be sorry to see Brecon go. I know a lot of people won't, but equally, I'd be happy to welcome Celtic Hearts into the setup if they're the team that come up.
Definitely.
Sammy, I've got a question about this, right? And you're the man to answer it.
I think I know what you're going to say here. I think I know what you're going to say.
I bet you don't. Right,
north and south.
Yeah, that's exactly.
I told you. So the question is, if Brecon do get relegated, do they go into the Lowland League or do they go into the Highland League? Now,
they're replacing a Lowland League team.
Yeah.
So surely that would mean that they would have to play in the Lowland League. Or
no,
is that not how it works?
I'm led to believe geographically.
I think they can about a little bit to
I think geographically they go into the Highland.
Mm-hmm.
That's from what I'm led to believe. I'm not 100% sure.
I'm thinking about what must have happened previous, because there must have been a point where Cove came up and Berwick went down. So that must have been a similar thing where you lose one of the Highlands.
It's geographically, yeah. Well, could you imagine
Berwick in the Highland League?
Exactly, playing Wick Academy away.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, no, I just wondered how that worked, because surely if that happens maybe 3 or 4 years in a row, though, they would have to try and maybe some of the teams that are in the middle ground, like any teams around Dundee or that sort of Falkirk way, would maybe get put into the Highland League.
Also believe as well.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I also believe as well on like a lower league side of things as well. With, like I said, we've got the East of Scotland League that's below the Lowland. We've also got the new West of Scotland League, like we said, Auchinleck, St Rocks, and all the ex-juniors.
How is that going to work? If say you win the East of Scotland and say, I don't know, Auchinleck win the West, do you have to play in a playoff to get into the Lowland League?
Yes, that would happen.
Right, okay.
But I was going to say that there is going to be a mid-Scotland league as well, I believe, where you've got the likes of the junior teams that played around about the Tayside area, the Dundee area, your Forfar West End junior teams. And so I believe that there is going to be so that's going to be 3 leagues below the Lowland and the Highland League as well. So it is getting quite confusing, but I believe that if Brecon are to be relegated, they would join the Highland League.
It'll be interesting to look back and say, I don't know, 20, 25 years down the line and see how much the league's changed in this period since the pyramids came in. Like how many, because there's so many, as we've touched on, ambitious teams in the Lowland League and the East of Scotland and even the West of Scotland now. You would imagine a good few of those are going to get up over the next 10, 15 years and probably replace established league teams. So it'll be interesting to see how the landscape looks in, say, 2040 or whatever, when we've had another 20 of these playoffs or whatever. Because I mean, they'll not always come up. Sometimes the league team will retain their status, and it'll be interesting to see how many league teams actually survive, because you only need to have one bad season, you can be out of the league. Like I look at Annan, for example. They've been really consistent in the top 5 of the League One, pretty much League Two, since they came into the league in 2007, I think it was 2008. Consistently sort of pushing for the playoffs, pushing for the title. And this year they've had a really bad season and they've ended up in the bottom half. They've been lucky, obviously, that Brecon have had such a bad season. But they could easily have found themselves in trouble this season just through having one bad season. So it's pretty perilous if you're in that bottom league. I mean, even Brecon, for all that they've lost their way, they were a championship team just a few years ago. So a couple of bad seasons and you can be completely out of it. I mean, Cowdenbeath have been down there as well from having been a championship team 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah,
So
I
they
think
got
Gary
beat
Locke
10-0.
Gary Locke saved them on against East Kilbride.
That's
Was it?
right.
Yeah.
No, was it East Kilbride? It was.
It
It was a Highland team. It was Cove Rangers, I'm sure. Was it not?
I thought it was East Kilbride, mate. Maybe I'm
Mate,
wrong.
you might be right.
I've witnessed them get beat 10-0 by Hearts. They didn't deserve to be a football club. Like, let's just get that straight, all right?
Moving on, because we're running out of time. Another playoff that we now know is going to happen is going to be between Wraith Rovers and Dundee after Wraith Rovers seen off Dunfermline 2-0 in aggregate after a stalemate during midweek. I'd like to see Wraith Rovers come up. Do you know that? I know obviously they've got to play whoever finishes second bottom. But a part of me says, well, you get the Dundee derby if Dundee were to see off second bottom in the league. But
John Nelms and his dodgy emails, mate, keep them down. That's but from a purely footballing side, I know we kind of talked about this a couple of weeks ago. Having Dundee and Hearts to replace, say, hopefully, fingers crossed, Hamilton and say Kilmarnock or Ross County, I think that's a good trade to have in terms of the standard and the sort of history of the teams that are going to be in the top league next season. But from the way that they've played, I mean, you would never have known it when they played Hearts a couple of weeks ago because they looked a shadow of the team that they've got potential to be. But Wraith have played some cracking football this season. But then again, Dundee, you would argue the money that they've invested in their playing side with Charlie Adam, Jason Cummins, you've got Liam Fontaine, you've got loads of experience in that team. They potentially could. I mean, it's going to be a good tie, to be honest, a good tie. But then again, they've then got to go and play the Premier team after that. So it's still exciting. There's still things going on in Scottish football at this time of the season, which is great. That's what you want to see. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, Wednesday night it brings some really tasty fixtures in the penultimate set of fixtures. Dundee United host Motherwell. We've got Livingston at home against Rangers. Celtic play St Johnstone. You've got Aberdeen Hibs. Kilmarnock St Mirren, which is a huge game, but even bigger, Anthony, is Ross County against Hamilton Accies on Wednesday night. I mean, how huge is that game?
Yeah, that's what we were talking about last week. The fact you've got Ross County, Hamilton, and Kilmarnock all playing each other in these last 2 weeks of the 2 games of the season. That's one of the good things about the split, that you end up getting all the teams that are down the bottom playing against each other, and all the teams that are up the top playing against each other. So yeah, I mean, it's fascinating. I love watching these or keeping an eye on these sort of games where it's do or die sort of thing. I mean, there's so much at stake, and I think everybody looking in, obviously Ross County and Hamilton and Kilmarnock fans won't be enjoying it, but I think everybody looking in will enjoy the drama of them going head to head at this stage in the season when there's so much at stake.
Yeah, I mean, as it stands, in 12th place, Hamilton at the bottom with 30 points. In 11th place, just above them, is Kilmarnock with 32. And in 10th place, just above Kilmarnock, is Ross County with 33. So it is really, really tight down the bottom. Stephen, Kilmarnock, they play St Mirren. Like I said, that's also a huge game. Kyle Lafferty, somebody that Anthony basically said right from the get-go when he joined Kilmarnock that he was going to be a pivotal player in hopefully Kilmarnock's survival. He picked up Player of the Month this month. QT continues form and saved the Rugby Park side from relegation.
I mean, I would certainly if you're going to have somebody in a high pressure, high octane situation, I mean, Kyle Lafferty's been there and done it. Actually, at Rugby Park, if you remember back to when Rangers and Celtic were vying for the title last day of the season, he goes. I know he's playing in a really good Rangers team, but he goes to Rugby Park and bangs in a hat trick. So he's been there. He's been over the coast before in terms of high pressure games for Northern Ireland and for club. So I just think his experience in that situation could be vital, and he's got the ability to score goals. I could see them winning on Wednesday and almost kind of securing themselves. I just think he is the difference. If he doesn't play, I think Kilmarnock will struggle because they've struggled for goals all season out with Lafferty, and I just think that with him they are a completely different animal. They've got such a increased chance, such a better chance of succeeding. So it's as you say, it's going to be exciting to watch the next couple of game weeks. But yeah, let's just all hope Hamilton go down. That's a play on Scottish Football Cast official. That's an official statement from us. Hamilton out.
You
Even
tell him,
comments.
Anthony. Yeah, no, I mean, all what's the word that you put? You say all all thoughts are my own or something, all words are my own,
Yeah,
and not
yeah.
that of Stephen. If I think what would be interesting, Anthony, is if we see Killie win, like you said, against St Mirren, Stephen, that would jump them up to 35. Hamilton and Ross County play each other. If that would end a draw, then that would go right down the wire, wouldn't it? That would prove to be such an interesting end to the season. There is other fixtures happening over the weekend. Obviously, this is all taking place on Wednesday night. The final fixtures of the season: Hibs are at home against Celtic, Rangers at home against Aberdeen, St Johnstone host Livingston, and Dundee are playing Wraith Rovers. On Sunday, it's Hamilton Accies against Kilmarnock, Motherwell against Ross County, and St Mirren against Dundee United. I'm going to ask you both. That's our hour up. I'm willing to let it run another 5 minutes. Anthony, I'm going to start with you first. What will we be discussing this time in 7 days in the Play On Scottish Football Show next Monday night? What will we be discussing?
We'll be discussing Hibs finishing third for the first time in 16 years. I think even if they were to lose the next 2 games, they'll probably still finish third. But I think they'll pick up a result either against Aberdeen or Celtic, and they'll end the league campaign on a high note. We will be discussing... What else will we be discussing? Who gets relegated? We'll be discussing Hamilton getting themselves off the bottom and Ross County getting relegated. Hamilton going into the playoffs, if that's possible, mathematically.
What about Kelly and Brecon?
We'll be discussing Brecon rising from the ashes to get a win when nobody expects them to. Oh, no, that won't be finished, though. That finishes the following week, the 23rd. So we'll not be discussing anything there. We'll be discussing... Edinburgh City will be in the final of the playoff against... who are they playing? They will play Stranraer or Dumbarton in the cup in the final. But that game's next Monday, so we'll not be discussing that with any finality.
Stephen, what would you oppose to that? What would you say would be different from what Anthony's already predicted?
Mine's is simple. Aberdeen finished third. Hibs in fourth in tatters. Jack Ross's job is on the line. If he doesn't win the Scottish Cup, he's out, right? Hamilton relegated, 100%. They're down. Ross County second bottom. Yogi wins the playoff against Dundee, and they stay down again. And I celebrate on three separate occasions, because then I'm celebrating Hibs finishing fourth. I'm celebrating Hibs losing the Scottish Cup final, and I'm celebrating Dundee staying down. And then Brecon will get relegated as well, and I'm going to celebrate that as well. So there you go. That's my dream end to the season.
Well, there we go, guys. We'll find out who's right next week on Play On the Scottish Football Show. It's been a pleasure presenting again. Keep the comments coming all for next week. We look forward to speaking to you then. On behalf of myself, Anthony Brown, Stephen Commons, we'll speak to you all next Monday.